6 p.m. on August 24th, 2026. Welcome, everyone. We'll call the meeting to order. First order of business is roll call. Ryan West.
Present.
Jonathan T. Myers.
Present.
Charles Canary.
Here.
Doug Grant.
Here.
You take him here. Robert Shades is absent. Stony Van.
Here.
And Greg Cantwell and Shirley Garcia are absent. Okay. Next on the agenda is approval of the meeting minutes from February 23rd, 2026.
Motion to approve. Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Yes. Motion carried. And now we will open up for public hearing to hear case number W-3-26, which is the COI waiver. Over to staff.
Michelle Hanser, Director, Planning and Zoning, W-3-26, COI waiver at 3131 South 350 West. Petitioners Dale and Jacqueline Coy, represented by Barcosi Surveying. They are requesting a waiver from the Unified Development Ordinance to provide for, potentially allow for a 2-lot minor subdivision with 1 lot having a depth to width ratio of 2.2 to 1. Where the subdivision requirement is a 2-to-1 depth ratio. The subject property is located in Nineveh Township. It is 72 Hensley Township. I apologize. I don't know why that's Nineveh. 72.8 acres in size. It is zoned SR, single family residential. This is the area of the property. And then this is a closer up. The property is currently improved with a single family dwelling and a few accessory structures. It is bordered by larger tracts of land used agriculturally. As I said, they are asking a waiver of the Johnson County Unified Subdivision section of the ordinance, where we regulate depth to width ratio requirements. The depth to width ratio is to prevent intentional flag-shaped lots or bowling alley shaped lots. Anything that is less than 5 acres cannot be more than twice long than it is wide. So the easiest way I can explain to somebody, if you have 100 feet of road frontage, you cannot be more than 200 feet in depth. What is a waiver? It is a waiver from we've done one this year and we haven't done quite a few in a year. It is a approval to exempt from the Plan Commission from their subdivision design standards. So we have specific design standards just for subdivisions on how land is to be developed or divided. It's kind of similar to a variance, but these are heard by the Plan Commission instead of the Board of Zoning Appeals. This request is not the actual land division, it's just to move forward with the land division. This is a proposal of the land, how the land will be divided. It shows lot 1 with a single family home being 2 acres, just the minimum acreage requirement. And then lot 2 would be the remaining of the property with a 280 feet of road frontage by 615, which is the maximum depth that lot is. The petitioner's engineer did provide an exhibit that shows perhaps the meeting of the standard, which will show a little jag of the property along the road frontage that would meet the depth of width by ordinance and by regulation, which is 307, but then it would cut it back down to follow the driveway and all that sorts. And then, so in essence, following that ordinance would create this little jag. With the depth of width being 2.2 to 1, I think, and with obviously with the lot already being defined as a certain, they'll have a much room to work with trying to come up with any other configuration that would meet the standard. I think this is a minimal deviation where they've tried to achieve the goal. And again, they have a route to meet the standard. However, that's the opposite of what that standard puts in place. Because we're trying to prevent, obviously this creates a flag lot, but this, by meeting the ordinance, it still creates the flag lot with an additional irregular shape of the property. So by allowing them to follow this a little bit more orderly, gives them the ability to divide their lot. Any questions?
So this is still showing the bump out there at the road or was?
This is their proposal. This is how they would like to provide the divide their land. The one with the 307 is if they ultimately, if you guys decide that this is more what the ordinance allows and this is what you will allow because this is the ordinance, this is what they would go moving forward with, but they're asking for this proposal.
So for clarification, they're moving forward regardless of what we do.
I believe
With the
so.
little jag,
Yeah.
they want to get rid of that for planning purposes. And
Correct.
the uniformity problem.
Mm-hmm.
Questions for Michelle?
It is a very small deviation, right? I mean,
Do you say isn't?
it is.
Yes, it's
A very, so insignificant and
the goal, yeah.
yeah, and it just makes sense to me. You know, it makes a rectangular, and I think that I read somewhere where they're trying to gain some trees in that, the control of that. But if you could get all the leaves to blow over onto the neighbor's side, that's even better, but yeah, I think it makes sense.
Okay, if there are no other questions for staff, we'll go ahead and open up public hearing portion of the case. Basically, petitioners and remonstrators would have opportunity to speak. Petitioners and those speaking in support will have a total of 15 minutes to present. Those here in remonstration will have a total of 20 minutes. And then following the public comment, petitioner will have 5 minutes for rebuttal or address any questions. So if you do approach the microphone, please clearly state your name and address. And at this time, if you intend to speak at any all on this case, you need to please stand and be sworn in.
Okay. Anyone else wishing to speak for or against W-3-26? Okay, seeing none, you swear affirm on the founding's perjury. Testimony of the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God. Thank you.
My name's Andrew Barkosi with Barkosi Surveying. We're at 4800 West Smith Valley Road, Suite O, Greenwood, Indiana 46142. I'm here with the owners as well. Michelle gave a great overview of it, so I won't double up on what she said. I will also say it's 4.92 acres. So if it was 7/100 of an acre bigger, we would not be here either. So if we actually made it deeper, 7 feet deeper, we would actually meet the ordinance of 5 acres and not need a depth to width as well. So as Michelle said, it's a small deviation from what it is. And I think our layout, it's cleaner and more in the intent of kind of what we're looking for here. It keeps the trees and the driveway on that lot too, how we're wanting it as well. So, you guys have any more questions? I'll be more than happy to answer them.
It's 615, the maximum that of the property.
Correct. And actually, they own the farm around it, and we would have loved to just shift it, but that makes it unoriginal, which is another ordinance rule. So it's kind of in a catch-22 area. So
Any questions for Mr. Rickosen? Thank you, sir.
thank you.
Well, being that there are no remonstrators, we'll just close the public hearing at this point in time. Questions with amongst commission?
Move to approve. Second.
We have a motion to approve and Mr. West, you want to adopt the findings of fact?
Yes, please.
Seconded this.
Mhm.
To a vote. Rob,
Yes.
Jonathan,
Aye.
Charlie,
Yes.
Doug,
Yes.
Stephen Flynn, yeah. Donnie,
Yes.
6 in favor, 0 against, motion passes.
Thank you.
We're moving on to the hearing for the Unified Development Ordinance Amendments.
Okay, so in your packet, I put together a few sections of changes. Obviously, there's a few areas of changes that all are subject to themselves, so it's not like a one effort of changing the ordinance. I can go, kind of following the outline in the staff report. We can just take each like main topic, like shooting or archery, and discuss it and then move on to the next? Or do you want me just to go through all the proposed changes?
With all of us. Okay.
So just go through it all? Okay. So the first change I noted was shooting and archery. There was a Senate Bill 176 that basically just said that zoning has no regulations of indoor shooting ranges that are in agriculture, commercial, and industrial zoning districts. Basically, they can exist, and they're permitted uses. We are subject to certain development standards. So therefore, I did add it in as a permitted uses in our agricultural districts, our commercial districts, and industrial districts. I did add some development standards about facts, how the building should be constructed if they build it. So that's just those general changes. The only other change that I forgot to add to the modifications is there's a footnote number 1 that is kind of standard for everything. That means that it just needs to go to development plan. I didn't add that to my chapter 2, each zoning district. So I will be if you guys approve these amendments, I'll be adding that like footnote number 1 to all those. Event centers, it was more just a clarification. It hasn't really actually come up, but if you read our zoning ordinance, we really don't list event centers. And event centers, which are for weddings, birthdays, and all that, is a kind of a common request. And for it not to be listed in our zoning ordinance, it's kind of hard to tell people where they could go, versus where they couldn't. So I added a definition for event center, so it was clear that this is for like private functions, private gatherings, instead of which we have a place of public gathering, which is usually for public places of worship. That just provides clarity there. I did add it as, a permitted use in commercial and a special exception in, for our agricultural area. That is kind of where we commonly are approached by those. They're usually considered as use variances in agricultural, but they will just be moved to a special exception. Again, I didn't add the footnote 1 to that, so in that zoning districts, pages 15 and 29, I've added the number 1 to it. Accessory dwelling, again, it was just terminology. Some people were reading the address standard as they had to have an address. I wanted to make sure it was not a mandatory thing that they didn't need a second address for their accessory dwelling units. And then also since detached and attached are listed as separate 2 different items, it is read as there's 1 attached loud and 1 detached loud. So I don't think the intent was to allow 2 accessory dwellings on each parcel, 1 being attached and 1 being detached. So I made sure it was clear that it was an or situation. You're allowed 1 detached or attached unified accessory dwelling unit. So I added those amendments. Accessory structures, which are not necessarily the dwellings, but these are like, the detached garages, sheds, all that. It was kind of pointed out by one applicant that what our previous ordinance had as aggregate square footage of all accessory structures was not written that way in our new 24. So the ordinance was changed, so I can add that clarification, which was the intent, was the combined gross floor area. Because we allow 100% of accessory structures of the house. So I don't think we intend to have multiple 1,200 square foot homes or however big the house is on one lot. It was a combination, just in case somebody wanted to put like 10 sheds on their property. That kind of helps limit that size square footage to make sure it's all combined square foot accessory structures.
That's all combined. If it's a 3 level, it's each floor. It's not just a footprint.
It's gross, it says gross floor area. So it
You
would,
had 3 floors,
yeah,
you'd add all 3.
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
minimum development size, this is kind of part of one of our things that we've only really met over the last year with our, commercial development. With our new, unified development ordinance, we put in that size restriction, like a commercial site had to be 10 acres for it to be eligible for land division. The same with industrial. Just throwing it out there as an amendment to remove that. Again, it was kind of discovered when we go and analyze all the parcels. There are several areas in the county where most of our commercial and industrial lots don't meet that threshold, so they would not, but they do have size that could be divided for multiple commercial lots. They just don't have that 10 acres to start with. So I kind of, and I looked at other jurisdictions, it's kind of a more jurisdictions don't have that requirement versus those, there's more jurisdictions that didn't have that requirement versus those that did. So I just went ahead and just omitted that from our development standards, just for future need. I added some definitions. Front yard and lot lines were not really, once we're defined, we're not in this definition. It didn't really come up, but I think it was very important when we had to explain things or argue our stance on setbacks and lot lines and stuff to individuals. So I went back and added all those typical definitions that we use to describe where people can build on their property. And then I have just a, small other minor divisions. Corridor overlay didn't include I-69, so I added that. We implemented landscape standards for residential lots, but it was implemented for agricultural lots and agricultural residential. I removed that. I don't think we think it's necessary to require a house to be planting 2 trees and shrubs around their house if they're not located within a major subdivision. I didn't think that was a threshold that we needed to enforce on. Inoperable vehicles, we used to, prior to 2024, just say 1 inoperable vehicle per lot. Now we allow 1 inoperable per lot, but it has to be fully screened, which I think is beneficial for our suburban White River Township area. But in the agricultural, I know a lot of people, if you go through a lot of lots, you'll see, or agricultural roads, you'll see a couple people have 1 or 2 inoperable vehicles. I kind of would like that, take that approach back and just say, hey, you're allowed 1. If it's in the driveway, it's in the driveway. I mean, but if it's in our residential subdivisions, major subdivisions, White River Township area, then it would need to be screened of some sort, like in their backyard, in their fenced in area or some sort. And then I also removed, we required our modification allowed mandatory sidewalks for our minor subdivisions, which are more of our agricultural areas. I think we would just be seeing a lot of waivers on that if we implemented that, enforced that sidewalk requirement. Because we have a lot of country roads that don't have sidewalks. And then the big one that kind of like made us, all these little changes I've had waiting around is our group home nursing home. The Board of Zoning Appeals has a case before it, which made us and our legal representation really look at our ordinance, just to make sure we are in full compliance with ADA requirements and fair housing guidelines. While our group home definition existed and nursing home definition, it didn't really permit it in any zoning district. So we along with Jacob and I, we looked at a few others, jurisdictions for reference of how they do it, a few counties as well. So we revised the group home definition, and then we placed them in our zoning districts. So by the amendments.
I have a question about that when you get.
Okay. By the proposals, we'll be adding group homes. And it's by special exception only in our agricultural and single family and duplex districts. Then it would be permitted by right in our multifamily and general commercial districts. And then we also have development standards for those in our residential, that it be residential design and character. It wouldn't be more than 8 individuals in a home. I think, and then we clarified the definitions. There are a few additional changes that Jacob and I discussed today. I'll go over those real quick. As far as the group home for number 2, the development standard, the item in red, it says group home as defined in chapter 11, section B, definitions, just to make sure people are drawn to that definition when they read that development standard. For the 39 on nursing homes, obviously nursing homes have to be licensed by the state of Department of Health. We just didn't think it necessarily needed to be reiterated in the zoning ordinance. So we're just gonna remove that just as a more of a clean, like we're more focused on the zoning than the state licensing that is outside our purview office. The same, for the family definition, it just kind of keeping it a simple definition, not necessarily needed to add the extra as distinguished from a group occupying a hotel, group, or nursing home, or fraternity or sorority. I think that's just a little extra verbiage that we didn't think that was necessary. And then for the group home definition, we went ahead and just again removed that licensing requirement, because again, that's something standard that's gone beyond, that doesn't necessarily need to be reiterated in zoning. All right, that was a lot of information at once.
You got a question, Jonathan?
Yeah, I do. On the group homes, and I've been interested in the mental health aspect side of these things, and we're seeing a trend towards what they call a sub-crisis. So people are put out of a crisis unit and put into a sub-crisis unit. And I may be going somewhere here where I don't need to, because I think you answered my question, is that some of those things were eliminated as far as state licensing. But where would something like that fall? Would that fall in, it's what happens when there's something new that comes along in treatment or whatever?
So the group home, if I understand what you're asking, so group home is not necessarily, we're not pigeonholing it to the only things that we know now. Like we know that we need a group home for people who serve memory issues, or a group home for, rehab facility or something like that. We don't have it such a specific standard. It's just a group home of 8 or less individuals that are receiving same care in one housing unit.
Under supervision?
Yeah.
Is that a requirement or?
Yeah, the definition itself, with Michelle's comments on limiting it simply just says a residential structure or facility where 6 or more unrelated persons who are in need of care, support, or supervision can live together. And we give a couple examples, such as children or those who are elderly, disabled, or mentally.
Thank you.
Period.
Thank you.
So the question on group homes is, and there needs to be a clear distinction, and the BZA is dealing with it the 29th of September on this one particular petitioner. But a group home, as I understand it, we can't deny it based on the state makes it mandatory. But a group home is more of a communal kind of concept where the 8 individuals there all pay an equal share of the expenses associated with that residence. And the difference here is with like these memory care units or a nursing home, those are commercial operations. The people there pay a fee to be there. They're not paying a percentage share of the expenses related with that facility. So in my mind, there's a clear distinction between group homes and a commercial business. And the group homes, we have a couple of them, as I understand, over in Carefree, and I thought there were more than 8 in there. I thought I heard 11 in one of them. So I'm not sure if we can restrict the inhabitant a number. I would point out that on page 239, we say wherever 6 or more, but yet on page 105, we restrict it to a maximum of 8. So I don't know why it wouldn't say that on both areas there instead of 6 or more. But there has to be a clear distinction going forward on these group homes. I personally don't like the concept of these group homes because you're bringing people with alcohol addiction or drug addiction. It even goes on to say that, they could have mental health, behavioral health issues, and you're bringing them into a private neighborhood. I don't think it's conducive to what a neighborhood should be subjected to. As I understand it, and I could be wrong, and Jacob probably has a better idea on this, the state says you can't deny it.
Well, it's the federal government says.
There's the federal government, so we're kind of screwed in that regard, but I just want to make sure that going forward, and we're going to hear this on September 29th, that memory care unit that they're proposing over on Olive Branch Road is a business. It's a commercial operation. And even though they're asking for a variance, they originally tried to put it off as a group home, which is, to me, doesn't meet that classification. So I think as we move forward with these group home concepts, we're going to get more of that. And so we really need to be able to clearly define the difference.
Does your definition then about ownership and cost sharing need to be specified in our definition here? It says it's a cost sharing arrangement.
Yeah, you have what I call a communal effect with these group homes. And the distinction would merely be if the residents are paying a fee to be housed there. To me, that makes it a commercial operation versus cost sharing.
I think the challenge with that is FHA and ADA and the case law on those two acts have more or less stated that the disabled individual, whether it's a dementia patient or whether it's someone with alcoholism, which is a disability or a developmental disability, those persons have the right to be in a neighborhood of their choosing. I understand, and I think the point on commercial activity is well received, and certainly makes sense, but I don't think bringing in financial payment for services into the definition of group home is necessarily the easiest administrative way to go about doing it. I think the best course of action for my research is regulating these facilities through number of persons and through architectural styles such that it's integrated within a community as opposed to looking like an institution, looking institutionalized in a residential neighborhood. If that makes sense.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, the debate is not on the appearance of the facility nor the inhabitants necessarily. My argument is is it a commercial operation? So is there fees attached? Is there profitability attached to it?
Yeah.
And that might be the clearest distinction, is that if the facility is intended to make a profit, it's a business.
So are rental houses.
Do what?
So are rental houses.
Well, but a rental house is not a business. It's a rental property. It's a house.
It would be like a communal.
Yeah.
People just.
Putting together. That's a
And
business.
the reason I'm arguing this point is because I don't want to see, through a variance, a commercial business go into a upscale residential area. And then a year later fail and another business, approach and wanted, well, you've already set a precedence by issuing a variance for this business. And I don't think that's the intent. So that's the reason I say we gotta be clear in the separation of the two, a group home versus a commercial operation.
And I agree with your argument, and I don't know if we're on the right path here. I don't know if it falls in this, area. But what would happen if an outside entity came in and bought this set, this set, this set, this set within a small subdivision or community? And it would become then a large operation, a large money-making operation. And so would number of group homes by one entity be a factor?
There are municipalities, units of government that restrict the number of group homes within a certain radius, such that if Indianapolis, for example, is an ordinance we considered. Indianapolis states that a group home can't be located any closer than, I think it's 1,500 feet. I could be wrong, to another group home. So essentially, if a group home has taken this neighborhood, draw a circle around it, there's a challenge, there are challenges to those types of ordinances that we've reviewed in case law, and most of them are successful such that the petitioner, i.e. the person who wants to put a second group home within that radius, the courts have found that they have a right to do so and have found the ordinance a violation. Now, this is why we didn't use Indianapolis ordinance. We were concerned about that.
Is
Go
there,
ahead.
is there a differentiation between a group home? Say somebody wanted to just build a home there on that same parcel. Their setbacks and everything, are they the same, or would a group home have more distance between a neighboring? That was a question that came up because that was one of the questions in something that, if it came up. Because if they were out, what about somebody wandering off, so I don't know whether there's a difference in
Well,
something like that or not. I
can
don't know
say,
if that's.
at least as far as the residential areas go, it still has to comply with the special exception standard. So it still goes to the BZA. They're easier standards to meet than that of a variance. But they still have to meet those special exception standards with respect to the residential zoning districts. They don't have that, of course, for the commercial zoning districts. But that would allow the BZA and or the county some sort of additional regulatory authority that those issues could be discussed, and perhaps on condition of approval of the special exception, that additional landscaping has to be implemented, or additional parking, or et cetera. So it allows that piece of it.
Well, who is that entity? Who is the oversight within our county? Who goes in and says, well, this group home is not meeting the criteria that we have for group homes? What person makes that decision?
Board of Zoning Appeals.
So let me ask it this way. Are you concerned about new builds, or are you concerned about retrofitting old homes? Because I think that is perhaps a little bit of, in fairness, an enforcement challenge. If a use comes on a property and 8 unrelated individuals with dementia move in, well, Michelle has to hear about it, and she might not, before she says, oh, there's a zoning violation, you didn't receive a special exception from the Board of Zoning Appeals. New build's a little bit different because she reviews the building permits She knows what that use is or prospective use is for the property prior to anything being built. I think the older homes and the older established neighborhoods, it's more enforcement than anything, but it all goes back to the BZA.
But that is an issue though, because, I mean, just like anybody else, once they put their plan of action in work and they get it going, if they don't stick to it. You know, you don't have enough staff to go out and police everybody unless somebody lets you know that there's something going on. So does that fall back? I mean, it doesn't go back to BZA, it goes back to that department to issue the citation or violation or whatever.
But one of her corrective actions will be, you can apply for a special exception
Yeah.
for the Board of Zoning Appeals and you'll be heard.
Yeah.
But there, you're still talking about a residence, not a business. That's the
Correct.
key difference, and that's all I'm trying to stress here. I mean, you could buy 4 or 5 homes in a neighborhood and turn them into rental property, which these companies are doing quite frequently anymore, but there's still a residence. It's a rental property for a residence. It's not, for the individual in there, it's not a business. So there's, I think, a clear distinction there. It's a rental property for a residence. Versus if you tried to buy a home in a neighborhood and then run a garage out of it or a restaurant, you know, that'd be a business, right? So there's a clear distinction. And in my mind, these memory care units, nursing homes and things of that nature qualify as a business and wouldn't be applicable to any kind of residential criteria.
So does not-for-profit enter into that anywhere?
Yeah.
I agree with Ron. I think we need a better definition of what a group home is and tie that down a little tighter. Because by reading that, other than architecture design, the only other stipulation is number of people, and it specifies unrelated. So if some are related and some are unrelated, that number can get bigger. Well, 4 of us are brothers and sisters, but the other 8 are not. You see what I mean? I think we need a better definition of what a group home actually is.
And is
Well,
the architectural design just limited to the outside, or is it, there are minimum requirements inside, like each person has to have their own bedroom bathrooms?
Just the concern was more of the outside appearance, because
Maybe
you as a
the
neighbor.
neighborhood,
it-
yeah.
it, you know, if
The
you're
neighborhood
just looking at
design.
it, yeah. And that's why we added, you know, it similar to adjacent properties, right?
So what's the key there? Is the unrelated? Because we had an issue with defining single family homes, and we really couldn't do that, if I remember right. Because somebody could take one of those rental houses Ron's talking about, and then you start including grandma and grandpa and aunts and uncles and cousins and whoever, and before long you've got more than just a, I mean, that's a single family, but it's not mom and dad and 3
It's
kids,
exactly
or
the
whatever.
situation that happened. Street for me. Father and son lived together, and then he invited all his friends, and there was 12 people living in a 2-bedroom house, and
Well, but
grandfather.
the definition here would help cure that, right? Because those are unrelated persons. I guess the
Yeah.
fear is, well, you know, I'll never have 12 kids, but somebody could have 12 kids, right?
Well,
And as long as those 12 kids are all related, there's a mom and a dad,
yeah,
or there's some family connection. We don't want to step on that,
yeah,
I suppose.
sure. Not much you can step on anymore,
But there are
but yeah.
certain levels of care that are required by children as well. So it's-
Sure. So Stoney, you mentioned a better definition of group home. What other items would you like to see within the definition itself? Should it focus more on commercial be non-commercial, meaning,
Mhm.
or
I kind of agree with Ron and tying it down that is it a business or is it not a business? Like Ron alluded to, well, if they're sharing expenses, well, that's sharing utilities, gas, water, lights. Well, if you're in a nursing home or a business, you're not doing that. You're just paying a fee to be there. And that's a distinction. And I don't know. I kind of like that. I kind of agree with that. That way, if you get these group homes and you determine that, well, no, they're not sharing expenses. They're actually paying a fee to be there. Well, that crossed the line of permissibility for it not being a group home. But if the inquiry revealed that, yes, they are, in fact, they're all sharing all the expenses to live there, then yes, I think that it starts to fall in that definition of a group home. And then I think we need to rub on that number of unrelated individuals too. Because like I said, some of them could simply say, well, some of us are related and some of us are not. So that number grew from 8. I think this, by the intention, was there would just be 8 people unrelated living there. Well, that's fine, but now 4 of them tell you that they're related and the other 8 says we're unrelated. Well, it says a maximum of 8 unrelated individuals, not a maximum of 8 individuals. I think you could run into an issue with people stepping into that gray area and getting more people in the group home than what it's intended to be.
How are these taxed? I mean, is that how you find out if they're a group home or not? Is by a parcel number or something?
I don't look into tax assessment.
Well, I'm just trying to figure out how we know it's a group home or not.
I don't think it's higher tax like a rental property.
No, it pays the same tax.
well, you mean
Yeah,
1%
they're
or
not
2%?
taxed.
Might be a 2% tax, but
Well, if they get a 2%, then they are commercial.
Yeah, and if they're like owned by a hospital or something, or an institution.
It's a business.
It'd have to be more structured like a cooperative. Sure, the preference of-
Well, as I understand it, on these group homes, somebody owns it, some government unit, I thought, bought the home. And they made it available for these 8 individuals to live there collectively and share the expenses. That's how I thought that these were put together and worked. Somebody buys it, I'm assuming it's a government unit. And then these individuals, it's kind of like AA, they kind of feed off each other and kind of help each other rehabilitate or stay clean or whatever. That was the concept, I believe, behind these group homes, and to put them in a neighborhood where they're not subject to the thought of being institutionalized. So they got this family setting that they're in. And even though I don't like putting it in neighborhoods necessarily, but that's the idea. I had nothing wrong with that idea, I guess, and it's probably working to a certain degree. But again, the distinction is, let's just say I bought a home in a neighborhood and I'm running it like a motel. I got 6 or 8 people a day going in there paying me to be here overnight or stay 2 days or whatever in the hell it is. It's like a motel. So now there's a clear distinction, right? It'd be easily to discern one versus the other. So again, I go back to these memory care units and things of that nature. There should be a clear distinction between that and a group home.
would it cure some of your concerns if transient type language was utilized, because I think a lot of these group homes, and I'm just talking, a lot of these group homes probably have life contracts, I would think, or contracts that are at least a year as far as a lease goes, or, or I said life, a lot of nursing homes have life contracts. Does that ease any concerns about it being commercial or non-commercial?
No. That
Yeah,
would
because it
be-
could come from grants, it could come from,
how they get the money to buy the home, that's not an issue. And again, I go back to it's cost sharing to be there, so they're sharing the cost. I'm assuming
So
equally or based on their
But
ability.
I guess my point is, does it become less commercial in our mind if the group home definition would have something to the effect of 8 unrelated individuals staying on a permanent basis as opposed to temporary or transient? Or not?
Yeah, that, again, that doesn't play into the distinction I'm looking for.
what I,
This memory care unit that's being proposed, I'll just use it as an example. They're gonna house 10, 12 people, whatever, not a huge number. But they're charging them $8,000 a month to be there. Does that sound like a group home? No. $8,000 a month per person is clearly a business.
but how do they come up with the 8,000 a month?
Oh, that's what most of these places you go into. Charlie.
No, but that goes back to my question before. If these folks are sharing the expenses.
No,
Well,
I'm
just
not
keep-
talking a communal home. I'm talking about
No,
this memory care.
Group home.
Well, group home, they just split the expenses as I
So
understand.
does each individual pay X amount of the utility bill and the water bill and?
No,
That-
it's
They probably estimate on an annual basis that the expenses are gonna be, what is for round numbers, $800 a month. Each guy pays $100.
But that's my point is how do they come to that
Well, I don't know.
number that each one's sharing?
Well,
It's
they-
kind of like a fee.
And again, that's
They-
not relative to what.
But that's kind of like
discussion is.
determining a fee, because that fee is.
We don't
determined-
care how they determine the fee. We just know that it's cost sharing. It's a communal concept. Again, all I'm looking for is what would you classify as a business? How do you classify a business? That's really the
So
distinction.
that's what I'm getting at though,
so
is if they say it's costing $800 a month for each one of those. And so, okay, so we're just gonna charge $5,000 a month. That's a fee because they've added all them together. Is that different than what a home is, like a nursing home is doing?
well, that's
Somehow they come up with a
the
number
way I
somehow.
conceptualize the group homes, such as the one that has the BZA hearing coming up, is essentially it's a small nursing home. That's how I think of it. It has less requirements, less licensing requirements. It doesn't have full-time medical staff. I think it does have somebody there, but it's not a doctor, might not even be a nurse. But someone there to assist these persons. They all pay $8,000 or $10,000 to live there. That fee goes towards paying that person to help supervise them, pays for a chef, I think, to cook their meals. I assume pays for the property taxes and for the water and utilities, et cetera. So that's how I conceptualize these group homes as we had thought of when we were deriving this definition. Not a cost sharing or type services. They pay one fee and then they're there. Now I do understand Commissioner West's point. It does sound like a business.
I feel like, so in my 2 cents for what it is. So obviously group home used to be a condemnation or a term that was used for really group home. And if you looked at most of the definitions and what our definition used to be, is for the children group homes, like where children either that have behavioral issues or, people, I don't know how those are funded. I've never looked into it. I don't know if they're backed by a government entity of some sort, but group home in this terms is not necessarily related to that type of situation. It's just what we're defining the building to be used for. A group of individuals that are living in a shared space that are either receive care, support, or supervision. Now, I know, like I said, group homes used to be associated, but like we say halfway homes, those are for, people that are, getting out of confinement and need to find a place to live. And then we have rehab facilities, rehab centers. They're all in essence, other than the ones I'm thinking of a group home or for children, are all a business of some sort. Everyone's getting paid for those who are in there. Some of them make more money than the other, but everyone's making money. No one's getting a free handout that is saying, hey, you can live here to get your feet on. Everybody has to pay. Now, those of senior citizens that are receiving a little bit more extra care are paying a lot more money than somebody who has a halfway home that is paying for their housing, but they still have to pay. So I feel like we're focusing on the old term of group home, what
Yeah.
group home used to be. This is more of a land use zoning group home term, not
Right,
what
Yeah.
we're knowing as a group home.
indigent people. Go all the way back to that. But I just I had one other question. On subdivisions that are in our areas of the county, they're not in a municipality or a town. Do they have covenants?
Well, let them do through their HOA, of course, they have restrictive covenants.
So what overrides? I mean.
Then
paper
override
rat
the federal
rocks or-
government though, because Carefree's got an HOA and it,
They don't have covenants though.
huh?
Carefree does not have covenants.
They don't?
No.
I thought they did originally. But yeah, as I understand, if the federal government wants to put one of these group homes, they can put it in.
Well,
It's not necessarily a federal government. It's if anybody wants to do a housing for special needs of some sort, regardless if I don't even know if there's a federal government that has group homes. It's not a home that is owned and managed by any government entity.
So I can give you an
Well,
example.
Tell me you can't prevent them then.
There's
Because of the FHA name. Which
fair housing law.
states that people
Yeah.
with disabilities have
The
right
right.
to live in
Right,
the neighborhoods of their choosing.
Yeah, exactly. So going back to what Michelle said, then you can't restrict them, right?
You can't flat out restrict, you can
In other words,
regulate.
let's say I'm gonna build a subdivision. And then I put in place an HOA and we've got our restrictive covenants, and restrictive covenant says no group homes. Can I do that?
No.
Huh?
No,
Well, there you go. That's my point. You can't restrict them. You can't keep them out if somebody wants to put a group home there and they meet the ADA and the federal and all of that, then you can't keep them out. So it doesn't make any difference whether you have restrictive covenants or not. Again, I don't want to focus so much on group homes. I don't really care so much about group homes. I just want to make sure there's a distinction between a group home and a business. That's what I'm stressing here. How a group home comes about, how it's formulated, how they share the expense, I don't care. That's not material, what we're trying to do here, at least my thinking. I just want to make sure if you're going to do something, that we can clearly define whether it's a group home or a business. And I would venture to say that if someone goes to the expense of building a $2 million facility or $3 million and charging $8,000 a month for the people housed there, I'm sure they got a profit incentive in plan.
Get that equal nonprofit.
Yeah, and that kind of makes it a business, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Well, that'll give you guys something to do. That'll give Jacob something. For the next few days.
It'll give me some more. So we do have a public hearing portion of this as well. But there's one person.
I have,
Oh, we do?
This is public hearing.
Yeah, that's
but
it,
We
yeah.
published notice of the public hearing, more than 10 days ago, I think at this point. Now, still probably don't have enough to make any sort of recommendation is kind of what I'm hearing from you all. But I think we should open the public hearing,
Yeah,
at least
yeah.
for the record.
Yes.
And if no one speaks, no one speaks. Go ahead.
Okay. Okay, so we will open up the Unified Development Ordinance Amendments for public hearing. President would like to give comments for or against.
No one? All right. Close the public hearing.
Public hearing.
Now you can discuss more among the board, but I do have maybe some direction moving forward. And if you're prepared to make a motion, which I don't think you are, but you can make a motion to recommend approval to the county commissioners and make a no recommendation to the county commissioners as drafted. Or you can say you're not going to make a recommendation, however you want to play it. Or alternatively, if the group home is the holdup, and it sounds like it probably is, you can make a recommendation for approval of the UDO changes with the exception of matters pertaining to group homes, including the definition of group home, the definition of family, and their the process for special exceptions and their uses. Is that clear? So you have four options.
so if we did that, and then anything comes up between now and whenever we decide to do something with a group home, you still float, you still gotta play by the old.
Well, the old rules have group homes and nursing homes are not permitted as of right or as a special exception in any zoning district in Johnson currently as drafted. So
So,
you guys will be back here next month.
yeah, yeah,
Um, to continue the discussion, or we can continue it now.
Well, the BZA meets on the 29th, is it?
yes.
These changes will not affect anything on the BZA case.
Yes. It's good question. So the Board of Zoning Appeals variance request for the Story Cottage facility is under the old UDO because they've already filed for their variance.
Okay.
So they have a right to be heard under the old UDO.
And that, but it is the 29th, I think, and
Correct.
I said the 28th earlier. I thought it was on Tuesday.
It's on
It
the
is.
29th.
Tuesdays.
Yeah, so we have our meeting on the 28th.
And we can't approve the UDO, that's gonna go.
Well, and then what, I know, but where I'm going with that is if by the 28th, we've got a clear distinction and we're able to express that. I think that might play a part in the BZA if they're cognizant of it.
Well, they're-
At least they would have that this is what we've come up and defined as X. And then they would have that also to.
There are two members of the Board of Zoning Appeals on this plan commission, so
Yeah.
they're both right here.
Yeah,
And fully informed. The BZA can also, if it finds appropriate, establish conditions or commitments on approval as well. But that's really up to them after they hear it.
But if they filed under the old ordinance.
Huh.
And even though we've changed or we think we might change it. Can we make a recommendation or can we make it a motion at that night saying? Let's wait until we get this finalized because
You without I don't want to get too much into
I know,
BZA stuff,
yeah.
but the BZA could continue the petition to another meeting. Um,
But if that's the only reason we do it, is that a legal challenge then?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I just don't think that changes anything for the BZA case because a group home right now is being written as 8 or less by a special exception. So technically, if we approve this today and the commissioners approved it and the Story Cottage want to withdraw their use variance, they would still need to turn it right back around and file for a special exception. And they would also need to ask for a variance to allow for 12 individuals instead of 8 individuals.
But their special exception is easier
Yeah.
standards for them to meet than.
Yeah.
than a
Well,
variance.
what if we revisited this, or after you've had an opportunity, we go ahead and pass what's in front of us. And then, 2 meetings down the road, Michelle comes back to us and says, I have an improvement to make here. I want you to consider, or you guys are all full of it.
I like Jacob's suggestion that we would approve it without the group home part in it. And we would omit that until further review, examination, discussion, whatever. Because I'm afraid if we say, all right, we'll approve everything, but we know we're gonna change it. Then at the BZA meeting, the attorney's gonna say, well, you guys approved everything at the last, but you approved it.
Hmm.
So I'd be reluctant to approve the group home section in this.
Is that a motion?
Yeah, I have a question. Go, you can make the motion, then I can.
I'll recommend a motion if that's. okay.
Yeah, that'll
But I
work.
have a question about another point. Would that be,
Is it relevant to the motion?
no?
Okay,
Not
well, then
necessarily.
hold on a second.
Okay.
So if I were to recommend a motion, it'd be to recommend approval. Recommend submitting a recommendation for approval to the Johnson County Commissioners for approving the changes to the UDO along with staff's final suggested modifications on archery and shooting at event centers with the drop-down references. And not recommending anything at this point for group homes or family or anything related to the matters pertaining to that discussion.
That's my motion.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Jacob.
Angela, did
Did you get all that in?
So I'm just trying to, the terms that you use are confusing to me because I'm gonna use a rezone. A rezone has recommendation, a favorable recommendation, unfavorable recommendation, and no
Yeah,
recommendation.
it's a favorable recommendation on everything except for group homes.
But then I would still present it as it is, as everything, I would say omit the changes from the group homes, because then I'm taking what I'm normally do with recommendations to the council commissioners. Is if you say no recommendation, that is like, we have no recommendations for this section. I mean, you as the commissioners can approve it or not approve it. We couldn't decide. So if it's a favorable recommendation on everything else, but we don't want to forward the group home changes to the commissioners, it would omit those changes right now. That's how I would say it. Just,
That's confusing.
Meant for further consideration.
Can you have it down, write down 2 motions?
I hear favorable recommendation omitting group home and family definitions.
correct.
All right.
I'm just trying to like my standard procedures on how, because that's those 3 things that get forward to the commissioners. Okay, sorry,
Got it?
got it.
We're gonna use the language of omitting those.
Prove everything.
That's correct.
Yeah.
A favorable recommendation for approval of the favorable recommendation of the UDO with the exception of or omitting group homes and family.
So you won't even submit that change at this.
Sure. And then you guys can make a motion to continue the discussion if you want to discuss it next month.
We'll have to discuss.
Or they can just say, we don't want to, I strike it all and
So with that, Ron, you still first?
Yes, Stoney seconded.
Yep.
And Van? So yes, I'm trying to get it on the record.
Yes.
We'll put the motion for vote to recommend favorable approval of the changes to the council with the exception of omitting the group family home. Like,
Family definition.
let's take it for a vote. Ron,
Yes.
Jonathan,
Yes.
Ron's absent, Greg's absent, Stephen's absent. Charles,
Yes.
vote.
Before I vote, I did have a question back to the shooting range.
State government telling us what to do.
Help me, Michelle. So it says a reasonable effort is made to mitigate the noise. Can you help me understand what that is? What is this reasonable effort? Can you speak on that at all?
Honestly, I've been doing this for, I don't know how, I mean, technically all combined 20 years, and the only shooting range indoor that I've ever been approached by is the Center Grove Police Department wanting their own individual training center. So I would assume, just to make sure it's not like, some people are using like shipping containers that they have insulated and muffled the noise, so you just don't hear a bunch of pingings against the wall. That would be reasonable effort, is to make sure that whatever the backstop is not resonating sound outside the building.
So folks outside of the building.
Yeah, shouldn't have to hear.
Shouldn't hear it.
Yeah,
I think it's probably the engineering in me. I was kind of looking for a number.
yeah.
So,
We do have like a general noise ordinance that
okay.
if it comes push to, like I said, I mean, I've never been approached by an indoor shooting range, so I don't.
And I
don't know how-
spent a lot of years in the military myself. I've never actually heard sound outside of the building.
Yeah.
It's very low but yeah, so I'm just wanted to hear your
Yeah.
thoughts on that.
I think that's to prevent, like I said, a lot of people are thinking those shipping containers are a godsend to building a building for for cheap. And I can see a whole bunch of people now saying like, oh, well, just put a bunch of shipping containers and turn them into shooting ranges indoors, and that probably resonate some sound.
So, Mr. Chairman, my vote would be yes.
I vote yes. Stoney,
Yes.
6 in favor, 0 against, motion carries.
I have a comment, and it kind of goes back to what Doug was saying. There's a lot of things in here that, well, first off, I'm not against any of this. But with my profession, and I don't say this, I'm going to get clobbered. There's a lot of things that are added into ag that, like homes or residences or whatever. And, you know, I mean, but I think a lot of those are protected by, what's the word? Not a variance, but a special exception.
Lot size.
Some of those things. So, I mean, so not just everything can just go out and take farmland and
Yeah.
agriculture land and do that. The shooting range had a question of that because, you know, if somebody wanted to come out and build that right next to me where I've got cattle all the time, that would be a concern. But
Take it up with
that
your
could
state
be a special
representative.
exception. I
Huh?
mean, if that came up and you had to request a special exception, then that could be addressed at that point.
We can't put special exceptions on shooting ranges. That's what the state law says.
But I mean, there are other things that we had.
Yeah,
Yeah, the shooting range was a question I had, but
yeah. Well, just like event centers. I mean, sometimes
Yeah.
those weddings out in the middle of nowhere are okay because
Yeah,
they're not
right.
next to neighbors.
and that's what I'm trying to say. I'm not against that. But there are some people that don't want anything out there. Period. A lot of farm people don't want anything out there. Unless they want to sell a lot. See, so it works both ways. You see what I'm saying? So. But I'm just saying that because, you know, I've left here before with those same kind of things, and boy, I tell you what, it don't take long before I get phone calls and what they, you know, are you doing? Because you're supposed to be representing us, and I think I am, but You gotta be reasonable about it too, so that's just why I brought it up.
Anything else?
Move to adjourn.
I'll second.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Night, everybody.
See everybody in a month.
He's done.
It's never been.
The ball flying and it's in the knot.
Take care, buddy.
I've never been. Up here in Northern Castle.
Oh, yeah.
It's those jobs.
Oh, I know.
That's not. Here that arm, man.
But the-
Oh, I didn't sign my.
Yeah, I don't know what that was. So.
Hey, Michelle?
Took the disc. That's.
We need to change it.
So.
Are we
We
signing
ain't
for
signing.
We are.
Dude, we're still signing them?
Yes.
Well, this is all.